Hello world, welcome to another video of Easy Python. We are Ana Paula, Elisa, and Sofia, and today we are going to teach you how to make a functioning program from scratch. To begin with, it is important for you to understand some basic concepts. First of all, let's understand what programming is. Programming is the act of creating a sequence of ordered steps to accomplish a specific task. This concept can be applied in many contexts, such as planning a trip, organizing a vacation, or even following a recipe in the kitchen. In the field of computer science, programming refers to the process of creating programs or applications by developing source code, which consists of a set of instructions that the computer follows to execute a program. Programming is what allows a computer to operate and perform the task requested by the user, which is why it is so important. Programming languages are the tools we use to instruct computers. Let's take a closer look at them. A programming language is an artificial pre-designed language made up of symbols, words, and signs that allows communication between the programmer and the computer. The instructions that a computer follows to run applications and programs are written in a programming language and translated into machine language, which the hardware, physical components, can interpret and execute. Source code consists of lines of text expressing instructions in a programming language that the computer must carry out. This code is created, designed, written, maintained, and debugged through programming. Just in case you were wondering, not all coding languages are the same, which is why it is so important to know the different types of programming languages. There are different programming languages, like Java, Perl, or Python. These languages change over time, grow, and evolve. For this exercise, we will use Python due to its simplicity and practicality for creating programs like this one. And now, let's go to something more interesting. What is programming used for? The main goal of programming is to define instructions so that a computer can execute systems, programs, and applications that are different, accessible, and user-friendly. Computer programs typically follow algorithms. But what is an algorithm? An algorithm is a set of steps or instructions that must be followed and executed in order to achieve a desired result. They are used to solve everyday problems and organize priorities. They can be executed by a processor using programming languages such as Visual Basic, C, C++, PHP, among others. In programming, algorithms are either quantitative, dealing with calculations, or qualitative, guiding tasks through descriptive steps. And last but not least, an algorithm must meet 5 important conditions. Number 1. Finite. It must end at some point. Number 2. Defined. Following the algorithm twice produces the same result. Number 3. Input. It must generate initial data. Number 4. Output. At the end, the algorithm produces results related to the input data. Number 5. Effective. All operations are simple enough to be executed accurately. If you have understood all of this, you're more than ready to make your first program. Let's begin with something easy. A calculator that converts dollars to pesos and pesos to dollars. First of all, you need to create an algorithm. This will be like the soul of our program. We will start with an algorithm without parameters, and later you will see the difference between this one and an algorithm with parameters. In my case, I will write mine in a Google document, but you can write yours wherever you want. Just make sure it's somewhere you can refer to later. So here I already have my Google document. That is where I am putting all my algorithm. So first, I'm going to type start. Then, I will define my variables. that are pesos and dollars. And we have to specify that these have to be decimal numbers, so we type decimal numbers. And then we will have to define our last variable, that is option, and this has to be a whole number. Then we will have to put our function, that is pesos to dollars. But wait, did I just forget to tell you what a function is? I am very sorry. A function is a block of code that performs a specific operation. A function can optionally define input parameters, which allow callers to pass arguments to the function. A function can also return a value as output. Functions are useful for encapsulating common operations into a single, reusable block, ideally with a name that clearly describes what the function does. A function is a block of code that performs a specific operation. A function can optionally define input parameters, which allow callers to pass arguments to the function. A function can also return a value as output. Functions are useful for encapsulating common operations into a single, reusable block, ideally with the name that clearly describes what the function does. Think of functions as doors or rooms. Each function is like a separate room with its own task inside. When you run the function, it's like walking through that door. You go inside, do the tasks, and then come back to where you left off. The main program is like the hallway connecting all the doors. You decide which door to enter based on the user's choice. Functions help keep your code organized and reuse tasks without repeating steps everywhere. Having this clear, let's move on with what we were doing. Functions help keep your code organized and reuse tasks without repeating steps everywhere. Functions help keep your code organized and reuse tasks without repeating steps. Functions help keep your code organized and reuse tasks without repeating steps everywhere. Having this clear, let's move on with what we were doing. So, we were in step 4. And now we have to ask for the amount in pesos. Then, we will have to put the dollars equals to pesos divided by 20. Then we print dollars. Now we will put our function dollars to pesos. Then we ask for the amount in dollars. Then we put that pesos equals to dollars multiplied by 20. Then we print pesos. We end function and we start showing the menu. So we put show currency converted. That is like the title of our whole program. Then we put the first part of our menu, that is dollars to pesos. So we put show Then we put the second option, that is pesos to dollars. Then we put choose an option. And then we set to our program that it has to receive an option. So we put receive option. Now we put some conditions. First, if option equals to 1, so if the user selects option 1, that is dollars to pesos, then our program has to run dollars to pesos, that is our first option. So we put run dollars to pesos. Okay. Then we have to put an alternative that would be our else. That is option 2. So we put else if option equals to 2, then run pesos to dollars. That is our second option. Then we put an else, that is another alternative. Well, this alternative will mean that the user has put a value that doesn't exist in our program. So we put that it is an invalid option. And then we finish our if. And now you may be wondering, what does end if mean? Well, think of it like this. You open a box with if, you put in a few compartments, else if, and else, and if closes the whole box. After end if, we just end our whole program with end. And well, we will name this algorithm pesos to dollars calculator without parameters. And then we will make our algorithm with parameters. So we name our algorithm that is pesos to dollars calculator with parameters. And then we are making our algorithm with parameters. So we name it algorithm pesos to dollars calculator with parameters. So we start again with start, then we define our variables that are pesos and dollars, and these two have to be decimal numbers. Then we define option that has to be a whole number. Then we put our function that is pesos to dollars. And we put in the parentheses pesos. Then we put dollars equal to pesos divided by 20. Then we print dollars and we end the function. Then we put our function dollars to pesos. So function and we put in the parentheses dollars. We put that pesos equals to dollars multiplied by 20. We put print pesos and then we end our function. Now we put again our menu. First we put our title, that is currency converter. So we put show currency converter. Then we have to put our option, and the first one is dollars to pesos. And the next one is pesos to dollars. And we have to put to the user that he has to choose an option. So we put choose an option. We put read option, and then we put our first condition. First, if option equals to 1, then ask for the amount of dollars and then we have to receive the amount of dollars, so we put receive dollars. Then we put run dollars to pesos. And in the parentheses we have to put dollars. And we put our next condition, that is if the user picks option 2. So we put else if option equals to 2, then we have to ask for the amount in pesos and we have to receive the pesos. And then we run pesos to dollars. And in parentheses pesos. We put our third condition, that is when the user puts an invalid option, so we put else. And we print invalid option. Now we again end our if. We put an if and we end the whole program, so we put end. And now you may be wondering, what does end if mean? Well, think of it like this. You open a box with if you put in a few compartments, else if, and else, and if closes the whole box. Did you spot the difference between the one with and without parameters? If not, here's the key point. In the algorithm without parameters, the function doesn't receive any information directly. It asks the user for the data inside the function. In the algorithm with parameters, the function receives the data as an input, parameter, when it's called, instead of asking for it itself. Now that we have our algorithm, let's go with our flowchart. That is our next step to make our program.
So we have our algorithm, but how do we go from that text to a working program? A great first step is to visualize it, and that's exactly what a flowchart helps us do. Let me walk you through how we built this one and why it's so useful. First, we start with the start. This overall symbol is our entry point. Every program needs a clear beginning. From there, we move to our first action, display menu. This rectangle represents a process or an action, in this case, showing the user their options. It's the first thing the user sees. Next, we have the read options step. This is another process represented by a rectangle, where the program pauses and waits for the user input. This is a crucial piece of data that will determine everything that happens next. That will bring us to the most important part, the decision diamond. This is where our if-else logic from the algorithm comes to life. The diamond asks the question, what is the value of the option? The flowchart brilliantly shows the three possible paths the program can take, making the logic crystal clear. If the user chooses one, the flow moves to the left. Then read the amount in dollars, pass that value to the dollars to pesos function, the rectangle with a function call, and finally display the results in pesos. If the user chooses 2, the flow moves to the right, following the same pattern but the pesos to dollars function. If the user enters anything else, the flow goes down, and the program simply displays an invalid option error. Finally, all three paths leads to the same end goal. No matter what the user chooses, the program needs a clean and clear way to finish its execution. So, why go through the trouble of making this diagram? It's all about clarity and planning. Before we write a single line of code, the flowchart allows us to spot logical errors. It's easy to see a missing step or a dead end in the visual diagram. Communicate the design. Anyone, even someone who doesn't know Python, can look at this and understand how the program is supposed to work. Serve as blueprint. When we move to coding, we can just follow the steps in the flowchart. It translates almost directly into the code. Think of it as the architectural blueprint of our program. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, and you shouldn't build a complex program without designing its logic first. For a simple program like this, it might seem like overkill, but it establishes a vital habit for when you tackle more complicated projects. Now that we have our blueprint, we are perfectly ready to start building our program in Python.
Let's create the first code without parameters. First off, we'll create a definition, pesos to dollars. Pesos is a variable with float numbers, decimals. We ask the user to enter the amount in Mexican pesos. Thereafter, we set the variable dollars, which is pesos divided by 20. Now that we have the conversion, we send a message to the user. The equivalent in US dollars is, and the variable dollars. Time to create the other definition, dollars to pesos. We set the variable dollars, and we ask the user the amount in US dollars. It is time to do now some math. We multiply dollars by 20 to create pesos. Finally, we deliver the message. The equivalent in Mexican pesos is, and the variable pesos. Up to this point, we have most of the program done. Now we have to create a menu. We start by the title, which is Currency Converter. Now we want to create the option. If option 1 will be dollars to pesos, while option 2 is pesos to dollars. We let the user choose the option. We introduce input, so it will be automatically an string option. If the option is equal to 1, we set the variable pesos to dollars. If the option is equal to 2, we set the option. Oh, I got a mistake here, so let's correct it. Is dollar to pesos the option 1 and pesos to dollars option 2. Finally, if either of the option is selected, we show a message which will say invalid option. Moment of truth. It's time to run out our program. First, we choose an option. We're gonna choose dollars to pesos. Then we set the amount in US dollars and we get the right result, which is 200 pesos. Okay, time to do it otherwise. We choose now option 2. We set the amount in Mexican pesos. This time it's gonna be 100. And we have the correction right. This means that our program is working properly. Finally, it's time to try out the last option, which is invalid. So let's choose an option that is not on the menu. As expected, it shows invalid option. Now it is time to code the other program, this time with parameters. First, we want to set up the definitions. We define pesos to dollars in relation with pesos. So dollars is equal to pesos divided by 20. We print the message. The equivalent in US dollars is, and we put the variable dollars. Now let's set the other definition. Dollars to pesos. Dollars is equal to pesos per 20. And we print the message. The equivalent in Mexican pesos is, and the variable pesos. Now that we have the definitions done, it is time to make a menu. We add currency converter. Option 1 is pesos to dollars, and option 2 is dollars to pesos. Now we are gonna ask the user its option. If the option is equal to 1, we are gonna make the user to introduce the amount in Mexican pesos. Thereafter, we will call the definition pesos to dollars. If the option is equal to 2, we are gonna ask the user to enter the amount in US dollars, and we will call the definition dollars to pesos. If the user selects anything else, the screen is gonna show an invalid option. Now it is time to test our program. Let's choose option 1. Oh, wait, I got a mistake here, so let's change this one for 2. Perfect, let's try it out. First, let's choose the first option. Then we enter 100 Mexican pesos, and yay, we got it. Let's move on to the second option. This time we are gonna choose number 2. Let's put $50. Perfect, 1,000 pesos. Let's see what happens if we choose anything else. Let's choose number 3. It shows a message of invalid option.